Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2021 Abington Finance Committee meeting. Irish spirit there. We are continuing our series of meetings with department heads. We are nearing the end of that series as we are continuing to work on the budget and get the fiscal year 22 budget ready. Tonight we have 4 departments with us. We have IT with Wayne Norling. We have the Veterans Department with our new Veterans Agent, Adam Gunn. We have the Library Department with Deb Grimmett and Henry DiCarlo. And we have the Fire Department with Chief John Nuttall. And we have Derek, and I'm not even going to try to butcher your last name, Derek. And I apologize for that, but we have representatives from all of our departments that we're meeting with tonight. And so we're going to get going. We're going to start with Wayne and the IT department. And then after our departments, we'll go to our regular scheduled business of liaison reports, correspondence, and reviewing minutes. And my agenda is wrong. We are not meeting next week on the 24th. We'll be meeting on the 31st. So Wayne, do you want to get us going? We'll switch over to your budget.
Yep. Like usual, really change much except for this year with my licensing and support.
Scrolling up to yours. There we go. The IT budget. Can everyone see that?
Yep. So you have any questions about my salary line items at all?
8%, 10% increase?
Yeah. That's a 2% my union pay raise.
From what we're seeing, it looks like it's going from 83 to 90, almost 91.
Well, this year, also I get a I'm not taking the town medical.
Okay.
I'm doing they upped my facility stipend where I do the cameras, the alarm systems, the HVAC, anything general around town, elevators, all that stuff.
They gave you more work.
Yes.
And a little bit more pay to cover.
Yeah.
That explains.
More reasonable.
I will start out as we typically, we usually have you in early in the process, Wayne. You're
Yep.
towards the end of it this year when I get to tell you that everyone who's come in has sung your praises.
Yeah.
So continues year after year where all of the other departments share with us how much you mean to them. So.
Oh yeah, but so then on my internet data processing, that went down a little bit because I got I got a better plan with Verizon.
Nice.
Telephone budgets pretty much the same. I'm paying for Scott's cell phone now, so that's in that budget now. My licenses and support, that's where there's a huge difference. We started the assessor's office signed a new agreement for a web support for their GIS, which is the $3,000. The third one down.
Yep.
And then the state said they want to try to have everybody go to e-permitting, which they're going to pay for the first year and get it implemented. But after that, it falls into my budget, which is 35,000 plus. That's a new cost in my budget. Then down, there's a new fire department software called First Due. That's the $15,000. That's a new line item in my budget.
Yep. On page 2 now.
Yep.
Can I ask about the burning permits?
Yep.
What is that related to?
So citizens can go online and get burning permits now, so they don't have to bother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay, so that software, basically, whatever allows citizens to do that, that falls under your budget. Okay.
Yeah, I took over most of the support stuff about 6 years ago. So any support licenses I've been taking on in my budget.
So that's
Okay. Okay.
this specifically is the licensing for the software that allows them. to
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
But what's the e-permitting annual support? That's gonna be every year?
Yes.
And what does that do for us?
People can go online. So we're in the middle of getting it ready right now. So once it's up and running, people will be able to go on and fill out a building permit right online and pay for it online. It's to keep down the amount of residents going into the town hall. So it's going to go for the police department, probably the fire department, sewer department, board of health. All the departments should be affected by this. And then, so farther down on the list is a new one called Team Viewer. It's a remote software that people can use to remote in to do work from home. We have currently 11 licenses, and as of December, the state's not paying for it through the COVID funding anymore. And then,
So did we just not have that before?
yes, we did have that before. Before COVID-19,
Cool.
yeah, we didn't have that. We had one license, which was mine. So I can remote in from wherever I am to fix problems whenever I needed to.
Will we still need 11 licenses after December?
I don't know what's going to happen with COVID.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, if we don't need them, actually the license is coming up in probably 5 more days. So I got to renew it, but at least this year it's covered under COVID. We don't know what happens as of next year. So
Right. Okay, cool.
if we don't need it, we don't need it,
So a lot of his new licenses is because of COVID, the e-permitting and the team viewer, are the big numbers that he has, and it's because we need to be able to allow people to work from home and allow the community to be able to get their permits and done online without having to come into town hall. And not that they can't come into town hall, but it makes it easier for them not to come into town hall and spread the virus.
Yep, and then everything else is pretty much the same on my budget as for the last probably 5 years. Nothing else has changed, so there's been a few licensing things that have gone up probably a couple $100, but that's about it.
Anyone with questions for Wayne? Let's see.
Are there any cost savings from being able to do all this stuff online now, or is
I was
it
wondering that
just
as well.
strictly a COVID thing?
Strictly a COVID thing because going into the office, I mean, not being in the office doesn't really save a whole lot.
What about the e-permitting?
That will eventually, that's more of a savings for the residents. So they don't have to come into the building to file their permits, and it will be a lot easier for them in the long run because it will send out emails. You can do the payments right online. So it's more of a savings for them. Unless you want to consider the overhead of, greeting the resident when you come into the office, But
Not sure the overhead on that is $35,000 a year, but
yeah, yeah.
But it definitely will be a benefit to the people of the town. Hopefully it'll lead to more timely payments coming in for them. So maybe we'll see some benefit there.
But besides that, my budget's the same. My licensing is the only thing really changing this year drastically.
Yep.
So. Any other questions?
Anyone? All right, Wayne, appreciate your time
Oh, yeah, great.
and all the work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You
Thanks,
too.
Ryan.
All right. Next up is our new veterans agent, Adam Gunn. Correct? Let me just look at my agenda. Yep, veterans is next.
I'm here.
Adam, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, thank you. Yourself?
Doing well. Good to
Good.
see you.
Likewise.
All right, let me find your budget here in our document. I think I'm still on fire. Yep. Library. There we go. Veterans budget. All right. So welcome to town. Welcome to the job.
Thank you.
We definitely appreciate having you. If you want to, as a normal process for this, I know this is your first time through. We can go around with introductions with the members of the committee. We've talked on Matt Sala. But then after we do introductions, if you want to give us kind of just some of the highlights since you started and anything big coming for the next year, and then go through, just kind of walk through your budget.
Sounds great.
So I'll go through my window. Chris?
I'm Chris Murphy. This is my second year on the committee.
Russ?
Hi, I'm Russ Fuller, and I believe I'm on my third or fourth year, Matt?
I think fourth at this point. Maybe. And Russ is vice chair of the committee. Justin?
Justin Van Nist, I've been on the committee 2 years now. Well, this is my second year.
Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Comas. I think this is my 5th year. It all blurs together. Welcome to Abington.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then Barbara, who
I'm here. I am.
outlasts everyone.
Hi, I'm Barbara Ray. This is my 11th-ish year on the committee. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you as well.
All right, so that's all we've got here tonight. So if you want to kind of take it from there.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Adam Gunn, the veterans agent. I am coming up on 5 months. I started October 19th, and I am just extremely happy being here and very humbled to be in this position. It's been quite the experience starting out here, going from a part-time veterans agent to a full-time veterans agent, probably after about a month, once the word got out that I was full-time with Abington. Definitely things have started ramping up. I've had 32 VA disability claims since I started on October 19th. Countless phone calls every day about family members in the community that are unsure of what to do with their family members. And I've stayed busy. I've been networking with different local businesses in the area. And the plan is to start networking with local businesses and highlighting other businesses in the area that focus on veterans and giving back to veterans. The Knights of Columbus is partnering with me and helping out with the Veterans Fund. The Ken Colburn at the American Legion has been extremely helpful in helping me out with getting me connected to the community, and the support from Sue and Scott have been tremendous, and I'm very appreciative and very thankful and definitely on a good start here so far. As far as the budget goes, not much has changed. Kind of like Wayne, I only requested to increase my budget in the office budget by $100, and that's all that's changed.
Hmm.
It's right here,
Well, that was-
1,200 to 1,300. Look down through. Does anybody have questions for Adam?
I did, but I can wait if somebody else has a question first.
Well, I see the total, yeah, I see that, but the total's gone from 148 to 198.
I don't know if it's calculated something wrong there or.
The only other thing that could have changed was, and Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but the chapter 115 portion of the budget does increase.
I don't know if we. I don't know. Sue might have stepped away for the moment.
Could it be, didn't we have one last time that it was summing up two different budgets at the bottom?
Could be.
Yeah, we did where, shoot, which budget was it? Who did we have in last week? I should know this. I'm looking.
Yeah, it could be
Oh,
just
the
like a software thing.
The Abington CAM budget was part of the town
That's right.
hall, town manager budget. So it was summing up two different things. So yeah, I don't see that being the case here, but
Right.
so we can get clarification from Sue on,
Last year, we were sharing a veterans agent, correct?
Correct.
So it may have something to do with that
Sue's back.
or not. See what Sue says.
I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. What was your question?
So we were looking and we were going line by line in the budget. And it looked like the only particular change was office supplies going from 1,200 to 1,300. But then when we got to the bottom and we got to the total for the department, it went up by 50,000.
Yeah, so I think we're trying to get in line with what we're actually spending for veterans benefits so that every year we don't have to go back and ask finance committee to transfer money from one budget to another to provide for our veterans.
Okay, so that's for benefits themselves.
Correct.
Okay. Not for any of the expenses.
No, because if you scroll back where you were before,
Yep, right there.
you were at 148 and now we're at 198.
Okay.
And we've been on track of spending 200,000 or more in the last 3 or 4 years. And I think with Adam being on and being active with the community and things like that, we might find that we can shift those benefits someplace else, but on that number is really what we've done for the last 2 or 3 years and moving money around at the end of the year to put that money in that budget anyway.
And just as a point for those watching, a percentage of the money that we spend on veterans benefits is reimbursed.
75%. Sorry, Ed.
75% is reimbursed. And there's no way to tell how much it could increase, but me being here full time, the outreach and the realization that there's somebody within the community here full time for the veterans, I mean, the phone has been blowing up. So it honestly, the amount could increase based on the information being out there within the community of the benefits that are available, and the availability of me being able to get in touch with by others. I mean, there could be an increase in veterans benefits just because the communication full time. That makes sense.
It does.
And I apologize, I have to step away again. There's something else going on within the community that I need to take care of. But if you
That's
guys need
okay.
me, ask me at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Sue. Does anyone have
Um,
other questions, Barbara?
Yes, so I was wondering how your department's been affected by the pandemic and if you have qualified for any of the relief or if you will qualify for any of the relief money. Those are my first two questions.
I'd have to ask a little more about what you mean by the relief money. But the first part, it's definitely changed quite a bit. You know, with a lot of my clientele that I deal with are more elderly, don't have access to internet, or a little more afraid to, you know, come into a town hall and come out of their home. So I think the traffic flow is a little difficult for a lot of the older veterans. But I think it's been really helpful having someone at the front of the building at least to monitor that and to help out with that. But I don't have a lot to go off of, to be honest, because I got here in October.
Right.
In the pandemic, and then shortly after, town hall had to shut down for a while, but we made it work. There's been really no setbacks. Wayne has been incredible in setting me up and being able to work from home if anything happens. I have access to everything from home if I need to, so there's been no setbacks as far as COVID goes.
Okay, I was wondering about like any additionally incurred expenses or anything like that.
No, not at all. I've tried to keep everything just the same as it was this year, just because I'm coming on board and trying to put my feelers out there and trying to do the minimum as possible financially, and seeing what's necessary from the community and from the Chapter 115 benefits. So nothing out of the ordinary at all.
All right, and has there been any like additional assistance for our veterans that are looking to get their vaccine? Are they getting help with that if they need it?
Constantly. I can't tell you how many times per week I'm getting phone calls about the vaccines for veterans. I've created a Facebook page for the veterans that I'm pushing out for the Abington Veterans Facebook page. And 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes I'm putting out information about new clinics that are out there from the VA. So that's been extremely helpful. And I'm putting that information out to the Rotary Club, to the American Legion, to anyone who I can work with in the community. So there's been a lot of contact about COVID and vaccines, and it's very helpful. And the health department has been extremely helpful and keeping me up to date on everything.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for Adam? I don't see anyone piping up. So Adam, very much appreciate the time. Welcome aboard. It's certainly a challenging time to jump in and start a new role. But we appreciate the time and we appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you all very much for your time. It's nice meeting you all.
Nice.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Moving right along, we have the library department, one of our favorite departments to talk to every year. Henry and Deb, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well.
We are, I think we are. We were lurking during the introduction, so I don't think we need to go through any of that anymore. But I will say that, the library is represented by remind people that the library is represented by a 9-member elected board, which makes it the largest elected board in town. I serve as chair of that. They won't let me leave for whatever reason.
I don't blame
them. We've been doing these presentations. I personally have been doing these presentations annually to you since before anybody here has been on the board, a long time. And it is a presentation of about somewhere around 1 to 1.5% of the town's budget. And I typically remind members of the finance committee that we try to do more with that 1.5% of the town's budget than anybody else, because we tend to serve one of the broadest populations of anybody in town. From expectant mothers to senior citizens, that we deliver stuff to their homes, all the way up and down. And we do appreciate Wayne Norland. I want to pile on to that. Thank you for Wayne, and he's helped us maintain the services and provide additional services to people, even to the point where you can check out a laptop and go outside and use it on the outside the building if you don't have any other service for internet. So for those, including the veterans that were just mentioned, we provide those kinds of services. And I just, before I turn it over to Deb, want to thank Deb and the entire staff, because they've kept us going with curbside pickups, with online services, with opening and then closing and then reopening for some browsing and really serving the people of Abington in a great way. So I'll get out of the way, Matt, and let Deb take over.
Deb, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. And good evening, all. It's nice to see everybody from a distance. So I very carefully prepared a brief PowerPoint that kind of tells you what the library's been doing during the pandemic, because library services are not quite as obvious, perhaps, as other town services. I do want to echo Henry's thank you to Wayne. I'd also like to mention thanking Marty very much for helping us get through and navigate safely providing services, and Sue and Scott and most of my other department heads and other town departments. We've had a lot of support this year. So basically, the PowerPoint, I promise, will only take a minute or two. I just kind of want to give you an idea of where we are. So Matt, if you want to roll us forward.
Absolutely.
Library services. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's a picture of the curbside pickup table that did all of my pictures corrupt?
I don't know if it's your pictures or if it's my computer that's corrupting them.
Okay, because they were whole rectangles.
Yeah, I think looking at my, sorry, what were you saying, Chris?
The email you sent, they were all there, so.
Okay.
All right, so at least you've seen them. Just very quickly, what we've essentially done is moved the circulation desk outside. We were one of the first libraries in the state to open for curbside pickup. The governor permitted that actually on Memorial Day, which was not an appropriate day to open a library. So we began doing curbside pickups the day after, the Tuesday after Memorial Day. And basically, if it's a library service that you need, we can do it from outside. Books are picked up. We do photocopying on demand from outside. Faxing, which you wouldn't think is a thing, but it really is. And now that Bemis's is closed, we're doing a booming business in faxing for people. Our tax forms are outside. We take donations for the food pantry. People can send us email and we'll print whatever they want and they can pick it up. So curbside is essentially the library circulation desk outside on small TV trays and carts. So
hold on 1 second. I'm going to switch to a different share that has the full pictures.
Okay.
Not let Wayne leave.
Is that better?
That's much better, yes. So that's how curbside pickup works. And I think our next slide shows what we're doing on, this is the staging area. So those of you who have been to a program in the Copeland room, either with your children or for an adult program, you know that typically we have rows of chairs or tables and people come and attend programs. What we have in there now are tables loaded with books ready for people to pick out. This is an average day's pickup. So at the far end, which is kind of hard to see, are bags, and we have been making deliveries weekly since May to homebound people. We have, we average between 4 and 7 deliveries a week plus pickups. typically, we had 4,100 from May to December. We were going to be here in January, so all of my stats kind of ended at the end of the calendar year. We have continued that, and so this is how curbside works. Books are there, people call us, we take them out. So I think we're ready to go forward. Now, you've heard a lot, may have heard a lot about quarantining things. When a year ago, from the end of March and beginning of April, I was enmeshed in Zoom presentations on safely quarantining library items. We quarantine most everything for 72 hours. So when stuff is returned to us, we can't just check it in. They go on trucks and they sit to quarantine, and then 3 days later we check them in. The reason for that is that viral load, particularly in a book, is more significant than, it's not so much the surface of the book from people touching it, which is why we can allow people in the library to pick books up and put them down. The issue is if patron X reads a book, holds it up in front of their face, coughs into it, and then returns it, they've closed the book and they've closed the virus in the book, and it needs time to remove itself from the paper inside the book. So various scientific studies have determined that 72 hours is reasonable. There's a movement now that suggests that 24 hours may be sufficient, and we're looking at that, but I do not believe we're going to do anything with that until we have a significantly lower percentage of people with COVID in the community. So that's quarantining. Let's see, what else do we have in here? More quarantine. Board books, DVDs, and CDs hold viral load longer. So they go in boxes and for a minimum of 120 hours or 5 days. All right, laptops. So we decided that we wanted to be able to give people access to the internet when the building is closed. That's very easy because the Wi-Fi is available 24/7 in the parking lot. So if you have a device or your own laptop or your phone or whatever, you can come up and sit in the parking lot and use it. If you do not have a device, and we do have a number of residents who do not, the people on the other side of what librarians call the digital divide, we collected some donated laptops. We currently have 4. Wayne helped us refurbish them, and we are using those to check out into the parking lot. People can typically use them for an hour a day, and we have a couple of patrons who come every single day and sit in the parking lot and use a laptop. So for those folks, that is their connection to the outside world. So that's an important service, and one that we're very glad we've been able to provide. We're grateful to the various donors, and we're grateful to Wayne. And you can see the large tub of alcohol wipes, which we use to wipe everything down when they come back in. Okay. The desk, when the building is open, which happily, for those of you who don't know, the building is open again. We opened last week, which is wonderful. Last spring, we had plexiglass, we have stanchions, we have arrows on the floor, hand sanitizer, and all of those kind of good things, as well as masked staff. And I have to say that the community has been remarkably responsive to very strange things, which are like arrows on the floor. Also, because I'm sure that Barbara's going to ask, all of those safety things were paid for out of the CARES Act, Town's CARES Act money.
I was absolutely going to ask.
I knew you were. I actually thought about you when I put this picture in.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see what's next. This is COVID style story hour. This is our children's librarian behind her laptop in the story room, recording toddler times and preschool story hours, which we then share. One of the reasons that we don't do live story times either on Zoom or on Facebook Live is because of permissions from publishers. It's illegal to read a picture book on Zoom without getting written permission from the publisher. And that's not a thing that is very easy to do. So if we record them and publishers have given blanket permissions, which they've kept extending, for libraries to record programs and then distribute them to a predefined group. In the way we're handling it is parents sign up on a very simple form with an email address, and we email them and they get the link. We can't post the links. As I said, illegal, do not wish to cost the town money. We have been running 7 book discussion groups for kids and adults. That's a total number of our book discussion groups since last spring. Cookbook clubs, craft programs, Lego clubs, reading challenges. We've pretty much figured out how to do everything that we were doing on Zoom. I'll be like you, I'm sure we'll be much happier when we can do these things in person, but at least we are able to provide those services. And hopefully we will return to normal services. So the budget as submitted is a return to library services as they existed on March 13th, 2020.
That's it, right?
That's it.
Last slide. Okay. Library budget.
Okay, before we go forward, I just want to point out one thing that Sue and I discovered this afternoon. What you have is a PDF of an excerpt of the budget. And in the column 2 recommended, the salary for the reference librarian did not carry over. That is in fact a recommended item. So essentially you want to be looking at column 1 as requested. Not entirely sure what happened there, but that is a position currently occupied and is recommended to be a position going forward.
That's the last person on the list there.
Yeah. I'll start with salary. And I do want to say, and you've probably heard this from other town departments, I do enter the positions in VADAR in some sort of order. And maybe it's the librarian in me. I don't know what VADAR does to them, but it sorts them very strangely. So it makes no sense. But anyway, we currently have 2 vacant positions.
It's sorting them by height.
Perhaps. I got nothing. So we have 2 positions that were vacated at the end of fiscal 2020 and were not filled. We had 2 retirements and 2 promotions. The town had a hiring freeze, and it kind of made no sense to even look about trying to hire somebody in June or July of 2020. That just made no sense. So those positions are vacant. I've been working with Sue and Scott. We need to fill those positions because we need them to restore our full number of hours of service. Yeah. So that's why those 2 positions are in there. They are not new positions. They are existing positions that right now have no humans.
And sorry, Deb, but just for anyone who's watching who hasn't watched your budget before, and for anyone on the committee who may have only gone through this once before, do you want to touch on what you mean by required hours of service and the required numbers?
Sure. So the state has a very complicated formula for certifying libraries. For libraries to be certified in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts means that we get state aid, which is funding from the state. And it also, and more importantly, means that Abington residents can receive reciprocal borrowing services. If you place a hold on a book and it comes from another library, that's a reciprocal service. If you walk into another library, you can use, in our network, you can use your Abington card. Outside of the network, you can apply for a card in any library in Massachusetts, and one will be issued to you. Certification is critical for library services, and there are several components. The first is the municipal appropriation requirement, which takes the budget for the prior 3 years, adds it up, divides it out, divides it by 3, and then multiplies it by 2.5%. So effectively, there is a number that your library budget has to hit. Our number for FY22 is $527,747. So that's the municipal appropriation requirement for FY22. That's the first piece of, and you can see I'm pointing at the screen. It's 537,931. So it's over that amount as requested and as recommended at the moment. That's the first piece of certification. Other pieces of certification include an hours open requirement, which obviously the state has waived both for fiscal 2020 and for fiscal 2021. That requirement will be in place for fiscal 2022, unless something wildly unexpected and horrible happens. Communities in our population group, which is 15,000 to 24,999, need to be open 50 hours a week over a span of 38 weeks in a row. We typically do this between Labor Day and, for us, the middle of June when school gets out. And then summer hours can be briefer. In communities on the Cape, a lot of times their 38 weeks includes their summer because they're busier in the summers. People tend to leave Abington for vacation, and we don't have people in on Saturdays, so there's no point in being open on Saturdays in the summer. So hours open is part of it. Another thing we have to do, if you look down a little bit in the expense line to library materials, the library materials budget for our population group needs to be minimum of 15% of the total budget. So what that means is the books and magazines budget appropriation needs to be 15% of the total. So that ensures that libraries are spending on materials for patrons and not so much on overhead. So that's a component. Another component is that we need to lend things to residents of other towns, which we do. And another component is that the library director in any community in Massachusetts with a population of over 10,000 people needs a master's degree in library and information science from an American Library Association accredited institution, and needs to be certified by the Board of Library Commissioners, both of which I am. And I
should point out from a trustee viewpoint, this is the only department in town that requires a specific degree for a department chair, a department head.
So those are all the things that the state requires for us to be certified. And the reason for requiring certification is so that libraries pull their own weight. One of the things, if you think about for a minute, if the state didn't require things like that, one community could choose not to fund its library, and the community next door would end up paying for that community's citizens without getting anything in return. So it's kind of to level the playing field and to make sure that things are shared equally. Libraries are big on sharing. Did that give you what you wanted, Matt?
Yep. So that was just, you had mentioned the required hours. So I figured it was a good point for you to go into that for anyone's knowledge. So
thank you.
With those two positions that you need to fill, you'll be able to meet the required hours.
Yes. Yep, we will. Part-time people are vital to our operation because we can spread out, it's more humans that we can spread out. So that would be, and those would be non-union positions. They're both non-union positions. They're less than 20 hours a week. So there's no health insurance impact or anything like that. Sick leave is a contractual obligation. And I usually underfund it. And the trustees have had a longstanding agreement that whatever if there is anything over $400, it'll be paid out of our state aid. Most everything else in the budget lines are fairly reasonable, you try to estimate increases for things like gas. Building repair and maintenance is library upkeep, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, roof repairs, things like that.
And can I stop you there? Is there a reason why very little's been done this year? Do you expect it to come back next year as far as building maintenance?
The biggest chunk of building repair and maintenance over the last several years has been on HVAC. Due to the green energy project, which finally has wrapped up, almost everything done to the HVAC this year has been part of the green energy project, so it didn't come out of our budget. And also, I think we recently got a new fire alarm system and a new sprinkler pump, and those were funded by an article at last year's town meeting. So we haven't spent money on that this year. Other things, we've done maintenance on the roof as necessary, and that'll happen again this spring. We've had some electrical work done. We've had some painting done. More has come out of that since this was printed. And we've had work done in the lobby. Some things we've put off a little bit because we didn't really want workmen in the building. But it will come back next year. It always does.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah, we never see actual, so. All right, thank you.
And Chris, I should point out that as trustees, we've increased incrementally in small ways the building maintenance line item year after year after year after we reached about year 15 in the building, because we see that, there's more wear and tear. Obviously, without as many people in the building this year, matter of fact, very few people in the building for a good part of the year, the wear and tear hasn't occurred as much.
I'm not so much concerned with the budget. I'm concerned with how much is actually getting spent.
Yeah, we never seem to have any trouble spending that one, unfortunately.
No, and there will be things this spring. So more will be spent. Repairs and maintenance of office equipment is the lease and maintenance on the public and staff copy machines. Other property related services, custodial is typically something we use for like washing windows or cleaning things. We're looking at putting tables under the portico when the weather gets warmer, for study tables for people to use with our laptops, their laptops, potentially for tutoring students as the weather gets warmer. And one of the things I want to do is get the area under the portico professionally cleaned up, get rid of the cobwebs, get rid of the dirt in the corners, get the windows cleaned. Because if you're going to ask somebody to sit outside at a folding table, the environment needs to be clean and attractive. So that's one of there'll be an expenditure for that. That also is where we have had carpet cleaning out of that line, which again, we didn't need to do because the new carpet was installed. We actually reopened for the carpeting on March 3rd of 2020 and then closed for COVID. So the carpet's lovely. If you haven't been in, please do come and see it, but it certainly didn't need to be cleaned because it really hasn't had many people walking on it. The professional and technical line always causes some question, and that is our assessment for the Old Colony Library Network. OCLN is the network to which we belong. It's our reciprocal borrowing group, and OCLN provides the mechanism for checking out books. So it provides the circulation system, which is called an integrated library system. It provides the catalog that patrons see. It provides the interface, which allows us to check out ebooks and e-audio, Overdrive. It provides the interface that allows patrons to use Hoopla for e-materials, and e-content has been huge in the last year. So OCLN provides us all of those things. So that's our OCLN assessment. I'm finishing a 5-year stint on OCLN's executive board, and as a nonprofit, the network, the board felt that trying to lower assessments for this year was not a bad idea, considering the OCLN budget is created in the fall, and in October, I think we had less idea where we were going than we do now. So but OCLN budget did go down a little bit this year. The rest of the lines, I think, are fairly self-explanatory. And that's about it for that.
Does anyone have other questions there?
If I could add, Matt, we do have a union contract being negotiated right now, so there may be an article for that if it gets to that stage between now and town meeting. And we met last week with the Capital Planning Committee, which seemed to be a little bit redundant for what you folks do, but we did talk to them about a couple of years out to a new roof for the building. We've been watching that roof, and it is over 25 years old now. So we're looking at $1 million expense for that going forward.
Getting that on the list.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but a comment. I'm extremely impressed with how much you've done to really work through the whole situation. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that I didn't realize how much you've been doing. Just a huge asset.
Thank you, Barbara.
Especially with people being home and unable to do much of anything. And yeah, just really impressed.
I will tell you that looking at what other libraries around the state are doing, I'm very proud of our people that the way they've been able to step it up. And Barbara, a little bit of the not publicizing it as much maybe was that we want to make sure we were serving Abington people and not people, flocking in from other communities where they didn't have services. So,
I'm not complaining at all about not advertising it. It's my own ignorance, honestly. I seen, different posts, Facebook posts and things like that about being able to do pickups, being able to order and pick up, but being, the people that are able to access a laptop and in the parking lot is a huge benefit.
Great service.
And definitely learned some things tonight about the the quarantining of books, just things that I hadn't even given a thought. So just really impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The staff and the trustees have worked really hard to make things work for our patrons this year. We are currently open. The building is open on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I do not anticipate expanding that until our neighbors open. We, at present, neither Rockland nor Whitman have open buildings. Neither building has been open at all since last March. We opened in July as soon as the governor said we could, and we closed in December when Marty said it wasn't safe. But we continue with curbside. Rockland and Whitman both do curbside, but the Tri-Town link is strong. And we found through last summer and last fall that being the only open building among the 3 towns was not terribly easy.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm trying to concentrate staff in the 3 days that we're open to make sure that we have enough people for mask compliance, to make sure that things go smoothly, and all of the things that we need to have happen. So I am hoping that our neighbors will open soon, and then we'll start looking at amping up our hours. But for right now, I'm kind of comfortable with where we are.
Well, I love the recording of the reading of the books. That must have been extremely helpful for parents with little ones home, and you know, that as a service that was a great idea.
I'll also mention Amy, the children's librarian, typically visits pre-K and kindergarten classes once a week, and she's not once a week, once a month. And she's been recording and sending stories to the schools, and she's sent lessons. Grades 1, 3, and 5 typically come and visit us, and she sent lessons for grade 5 and is getting, maybe already sent grade 3. I'm sorry, I've kind of lost that where she was with that. So the teachers can use recordings as they see fit. So trying to keep those services up as well.
Well, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing. Much appreciated.
Yep.
We wanted to set the stage for John and the library when they come in, because we're big believers in mutual aid, you know. And I should mention that we did help out our neighbors in Weymouth as they were relocating into their new building that they just opened. So we helped them out for a while.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, as I
And
said, we're big believers. We don't get our picture in, you know, for having a truck out there for our
I will give my yearly plug for the OCLN network, as Deb knows, I use that extensively for ebooks and audiobooks. That it's fantastic. It's easy to use. You've got access to all of the libraries all across the state. So I think it's a fantastic service. So
I'll second that. I mean, we as a family, we love the ebooks and the unbelievably vast amount of books that have been available to my family for the last, you know, especially during this pandemic. So yeah, it's the online resources are really awesome, really great.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions for Deb or Henry? All right, Deb and Henry, thank you again. We appreciate it very much, and we definitely appreciate the work you're doing for the town.
Thank
Any
you
of
for
the newer
inviting us.
members, we say this every year, but or any of the newer or older members want to do a tour, as long as you bring your mask and whatever, we can you know, we can show you the facility. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for
Thank you.
yours.
Have a good night.
It's too.
All right,
Thank you.
we will move on to our fourth and certainly not least department of the night, the fire department. Yep, still fire. I think that's it. Yep, there we go. Chief John Nuttall. Derek, please pronounce your last name for us.
Hey, Matt, it's Derek Hamadi.
Hamadi, sorry. It's very easy to say once you hear it. Derek, we've met before. I appreciate you coming and being here with us tonight. Thank you. Chief, how are you tonight?
Matt, everybody, thank you. Derek is here to speak. He's the chairman, I believe you know, of the Fire Station Building Committee. And even though I'm not, as the fire chief, not sponsoring, I don't believe I am, an article for the upcoming town meeting on their project, it is obviously under the umbrella of the fire department. So for at least for tonight's purposes, after talking to Matt, we felt it would be appropriate that once I get through my budget, we can then segue immediately and switch gears into the Fire Station Building Committee. And they're going to talk about a dollar figure item for the upcoming town meeting that I'm not sure if they're going to sponsor it, if the town manager is going to sponsor it. I don't mind sponsoring it. I'm not quite sure the mechanics of that, but that's why we're together on this. So it's kind of two separate budgets, but it's all under the umbrella of the fire department. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you. We certainly have had a lot of photographs we could do that with. It's been a very busy couple of weeks here at the fire department, as well as the last year. We've completely retooled the operations of this department over the last year, as you can imagine, and still staying within the confines of the appropriated budget. Fortunately, the CARES Act funds really assisted us throughout the year, and they continue to, with the continuation of that to a smaller degree, but we still do see some of that at some point. My budget, a couple of things going into it as we go. The document that you have, the figures on this are going to be off, and I'm going to explain to that why. They were correct when I put them in. We've had a very dynamic last several weeks with different portions of the budget, and I think I'm very optimistic that it may allow us to finally be able to fill a much needed position that we've been needed for a couple of years, and really we're at the point it's critical we fill that, and I can explain that in a minute. There are 2 current openings on the fire department for firefighters. We had one firefighter just decided to go and work in the private sector, completely non-fire or EMS related. And we had another firefighter that, for a variety of reasons, and the first time, I think in the history of this department, he actually transferred to another fire department in a different part of the state. And I actually let him go. That's not something I like to do because we invest a lot of the training in that. In this case, for a number of reasons, it was the appropriate thing to do. So right now I have 2 open positions that I'm hoping to be able to fill beginning possibly tomorrow. I'm supposed to receive the new state civil service firefighter paramedic list. Every fire department in the state that is a civil service fire department has been anxiously awaiting for this list. Again, due to COVID, civil service has been slow getting that out for a number of their reasons, but that should be out hopefully tomorrow, and we hope to act very quickly on the hiring and interview process so that we can then in turn enroll whomever we hopefully can hire from that list into the Mass Firefighting Academy, because the sooner we're able to fill and train those 2 positions, the sooner we can stop filling those 2 positions with overtime. Right now, we're actually filling it at halftime because there's no salary with those 2 positions that's also being covered. So toward the end of this fiscal year, I do expect a somewhat of a spike while we're covering those positions, and they would both be assigned to the Fire Academy. So we're trying to work very quickly on this to get them in before the Fire Academy fills up, because everybody's going to be in the same predicament. In fact, Katie will be looking to get 2 physicals for these firefighters fairly soon. I'm sure you'll be hearing from us if you're with them. There is also on this budget, there'll be a slight savings because one of the firefighters who transferred out, he was at a higher salary scale than a newer firefighter coming in, simply through longevity. He's been here for about 5 years. So there's going to be a difference, basically a savings between $10,000 to $12,000 in that one position, just throughout the entire budget. A newer firefighter is not going to have the same amount of accrued vacation time, and their annual salary is just at a lower rate starting out. So there's somewhat of a savings. So these figures that we're going to go over tonight, I can either give you newer figures or you can write them down as we go. Either way, I'm going to tell you what the new figures should be. Or we can do this on each line item, not each individual thing. I can if you want. That might be somewhat daunting, but I'll definitely give you the truer figures. And even that figure may somewhat change depending upon where we go with a few moving parts heading towards town meeting. This budget, like the library, does not include a collective bargaining agreement because they're still in the process of that. The firefighters union with the town. So that is not reflected on this. That I believe would be a separate article if and when that occurs. And there should be an additional reimbursement being added to the town of Abington through the ambulance receipts. Right now, it's estimated to be $106,930. We've been doing this for about the last 5 to 6 years. This is a federal, basically it's a Medicare reimbursement. The figure is actually a little lower this year because right off the top, they discounted any federal funds that we received, and because of the CARES Act, those are federal funds. So that offset that figure considerably what it originally was going to be before we had to remove that from it. So that's not really in this budget, but that is a plus coming to the town overall. Now, the number one change in this budget, my original budget included an additional position of a day captain. This is for inspectional and training purposes, which I've been asking for the last couple of years, as you may recall. Very quickly, right now, the deputy fire chief is the only fire prevention officer I have in this department. He really does not do true deputy fire chief duties. He's strictly really spending all of his time doing fire prevention duties, which are inspections, which are plan review for any new buildings being proposed or alterations to buildings. And that can include anything from a residential home up to a large factory. And there is a lot of growth in this town. It continues to go to grow, and every portion of that growth in this town has to get cleared by the fire department. Initially in the plan review process, and then throughout the construction and after the construction, when we have to do field inspections and then ongoing annual or in some place quarterly inspections, depending on what the occupancy is of that particular type of building. It's an immense amount of manpower that goes into this. And to be honest with you, we can't keep up with this. He's spending all of his time doing these inspections, and the amount of growth that we have coming in, we have all of the construction that you see, the commercial properties up on Chestnut Street. That is going to take a lot of time as we get into the sprinkler system testing, because there's throughout the construction of those buildings, there's different times we have to check the sprinkler system as it's being built, and then as the building is built, and then the final write-offs, and then as different occupancies move in there, that's a further inspection annually. That's a very large project we have coming. It's going to take a lot of time. We still have a number of residential units being built or proposed to be built. We still have the New England Art Building, which has taken a massive amount of this fire department's time, especially the deputy fire chief. We simply need another position in that division of the fire department to assist him. And I need another, it needs to really be the rank of a fire captain for a number of reasons on that, to be able to appropriately have the weight of a rank behind that to enforce any fire code issues or violations, as well as some of the training that we'd be doing in-house as well. I want to split this position between fire prevention and some training, because we now are in OSHA state and we're under OSHA guidelines, and we really need to begin doing more training on that. That's almost a whole position in itself, but I'm looking to at least combine those two large tasks into one position. When I originally put this budget together, it included that day captain position. Since then, we were asked to do a level service budget, so I removed that position again. Since that time, we've had a lot of discussions and actual movement on looking to transfer the police dispatch over to Holbrook Dispatch, where we also have the fire department. That has gone forward. There's been a lot of meetings on that between the town manager, myself, the deputy police chief, Holbrook Dispatch itself. Ultimately, without getting into that, because we could spend the entire rest of the night on that, on pros and cons, but strictly looking at the budget, the net cost savings for the town of Abington over the next 5 to 6 years is estimated to be almost $500,000, because it's all going to be covered under a grant. The entire budget, including the fire portion that we had put money aside for, that grant is going to cover that. There's 1 year where, because the police may not actually start until late in the fiscal year, toward the end of that, there may be somewhat of a slight offset. That's not Holbrook, that's the state that is considering that. But either way, we're still looking at a considerable savings. So because of that, in my discussions with the town manager and the town accountant, they have removed the line item that I had for the Holbrook Dispatch, which I believe was $190,000 for FY22. That actually frees up $190,000. So as I go through this budget, the bottom line is going to increase somewhat to cover the cost of that new day captain. But we're still looking at a net overall savings of about $37,000 because of that offset, that we don't have to spend that $190 going to Holbrook for this year or the next couple of years. And I'm only talking about FY22. That net cost saving is only for FY22. I think you'd see that over the next several years as well. So within my own budget, we basically found a funding source for a much needed position to help us keep going. Because even though I know that the town manager requested a level service budget, the town is not realistically at a level service. We're continuing to grow exponentially between residential units, the marijuana shops, the commercial portions, rehabilitation or reconstruction of some of these larger buildings like New England Art, and even just maintaining the annual inspections of all of the properties that continue to be built, they have to be inspected as well. So they're understanding, and I don't want to speak for them, Sue can jump in at some point if need be, but they're understanding the need on this, because the last thing we want to do is not maintain safety in town, but we also don't want to hurt the income coming into town if there becomes a backlog on new properties or new occupancies being able to open if we're not able to keep up with them. So I think it's a win-win. And I think we found a funding source that should work across the board. With all of that said, before I get into the actual line items of the budget, do you have any questions on that?
Hi, Chief. How does your budget compare to comparable sized towns for our neighboring towns? Because I understand and respect that the town is growing or being overcrowded, but with the volume of fires going down and EMS runs going out, what's the ratio of those versus staffing, and then the overcrowding of the town with safety versus actual EMS fire calls?
Katie, I'm not sure if I understand your question. Are you asking in comparison with the overall department budget with area towns?
Yes. Sorry.
We're still below them. And I know Rockland has a day captain for the exact same reasons. Certainly Weymouth and Brockton, they're going to skew this because we're not them. Whitman and Holbrook do not have the growth that we are seeing in Abington. We're seeing more exponential growth, kind of heading down towards more southern Plymouth County, towards the Kingstons, the Hansons like that. And most of them also have an additional person for the fire prevention division as well to keep up with it. So this is going to kind of keep us on par with comparable towns that are growing as we are.
I think looking at it from sort of the long-term perspective, I think for what we're looking at for this year, especially with the dispatch going to grant and being able to bring that position in, I think is great. My concern is when the dispatch stops being a grant, making sure that we're accounting for the fact that that won't be on a grant forever.
You're absolutely correct. And hopefully this is going to help the entire town budget grow by us being able to inspect these new occupancies that are coming in. That's going to continue to have the town to grow, which could offset or cover that cost when the grant runs out.
Good.
When you're doing this,
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
When you're doing this comparison of the savings from the dispatch and the addition of the position, are you looking at just what's in your budget or what's being affected in the pension budget and the health insurance budget, which don't show up in your budget?
I'm only looking at my line item budget. I'm not looking at it beyond that.
Okay, so there's an additional amount being added beyond what we're seeing here. Is there any way to make this, you've got a couple of years where we've got this savings from dispatch because it goes to grant. Is there any way to make this a variable expense that you only pay for in the next couple of years and then, it goes away?
The issue that we're having is the town is growing and we have to keep up with that. If we can simply stop the town from growing, I wouldn't need this position. And as the town grows and we get into the inspections of new properties, those properties at that point are always going to be here and we're going to have to continue to maintain them. The other piece for this, beyond just the inspections, is the training. And again, we're now under OSHA and we're really not meeting that training requirement. We're getting away with it right now because many things are shut down. But we really have to address that. We're trying to simply keep up with the growth in town, and we really have not been able to do that. So it's some of this really is meeting the cost of the growth in town.
I have a couple questions.
Ed Barbara.
how many years are we into the dispatch with Holbrook, over through Holbrook?
I began that in 2012, so we're coming up about
9 years.
9 years.
And how do you feel that you feel that's working well? Complaints, anything like that?
For the fire department, it's been a 100% increase in our productivity and safety. We're able to get all of the firefighters out on the street to directly assist the residents, not leaving one behind on dispatch. And even when we did that, that one eventually would have to go. And then we'd abandon dispatch. As you recall, that's one of the reasons we did it. They're extremely professional. We've had a very busy last couple of weeks, just here in town as well as around us, providing mutual aid. And they simply have never dropped the ball on us. We you know, it's, you know, we request help, immediately they answer the other end of the radio, whatever it is we're asking for, they get it. There's been no issue with it. It really is, they're a massive asset to this department. It's almost like we have a whole team on our payroll that we're paying $190,000 a year. That equates down to about $21 an hour, which is comparable to the price of a lifeguard that's providing numerous services for us. They're providing emergency medical dispatch. They're providing monitoring of the fire alarm system when there's nobody here. Certainly just the dispatch duties alone, you know, talking to our crews while they're out there, answering whatever requests that we have, whether it's more help, whether it's for National Grid to show up, a building inspector, what have you. It's, I think, the best money we've ever spent, and it's the best deal. When we originally looked at trying to do our own dispatches here in town, back in 2011, we were anticipating at least $500,000 a year. If you extrapolate that out to today in the state 911, personnel agree with us. Now you're up to looking at about $700,000. And that's really just for one fire, one police dispatcher at a time. In Holbrook, we have a whole team of them in the room that's able to help each other out as needed. And if it's a storm or blizzard like that, they'll bring extra people in to assist that as well. So we simply could not duplicate the service that they're providing.
And then,
with that money.
as far as like, because I've been seeing a lot of different things or about like, so a lot of people now have cell phones. So when they call 911, what is the delay with that, or compared to when they were calling and being directed directly to the Abington Fire Department, and now it's going to Holbrook? What's the, is there a delay? How, like, if you're not using your home phone?
There's a delay anyways, Barbara. If it wouldn't go to Holbrook, it goes to the state police, and then they dispatch it to your local system. So it doesn't matter if we're part of a regional system or not. It's still, if you call from anything that's voice over internet and or cell phone, it goes to the state police, and then it gets dispatched to regional.
The difference of like calling from a house phone. So if you're calling from a same thing?
Same thing.
Your
house phone will go right to your local dispatch, where cell or VoIP goes to state police, who then dispatches it.
I need to correct you. I'm sorry. The cell calls directly go to Holbrook at this point. All of the cell calls go directly to Holbrook from this area. By having all of the landline PSAP calls now going to Holbrook, it's going to minimize any delay. Because if somebody calls from your house phone, if you call 911, if you're looking for an ambulance, right now it's going to go to the Abington Police Department, and then they have to transfer it to Holbrook. If you call by your cell phone in Abington, it goes directly to Holbrook. This eliminates that transfer. Initially, it would go to the state police, then transfer to Abington Police, then transfer to Holbrook. That ended about 5 years ago when Holbrook took over the cell phone itself.
Okay, so, and like issues with finding where you are if you call on a cell phone.
They're able to pinpoint that down very closely. Sometimes it'll ping to the cell tower, but usually through Holbrook, they can ping it directly within a very small radius of where that phone is. We do this many times up in the Ames Knoll State Park. We
Mhm.
have people that get lost up there. Holbrook has been able to ping that to us, their direct location, and we have certain, special GPS units for that as well. We're able to walk right to where that person is usually.
Okay, so you're not seeing a delay with, I feel like not many people have home phones anymore. We do still have one, but
It's definitely dwindling.
feel it's, yeah, definitely dwindling. And I wondered as time, when we first implemented the system, I wondered how well it would work with the whole kind of cell phone era.
I think when the police finally move over there, it's going to solve all of these issues. All the cell calls are going to Holbrook anyway. They have been for the last couple of years. This is going to now have all of the landline phones go to Holbrook, and they'll be the answering point, and they'll be immediately able to dispatch from that point. There'll be no transferring of the call.
Okay.
It should be a rare instance if somebody's on like a Brockton line or a Weymouth line, if it pings to one of those towers, there's a possibility that could happen, but for most people in Abington, it's going directly to Holbrook right now anyway.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Can I just circle back to the captains? I was just looking at that budget while we were talking. So in your answer, you mentioned a day captain. So does that mean 3 captains, like day, evening, nights? Because do you have one captain per, I believe you have 8 people on a shift. So if you have
No.
more captains than firefighters, does that mean if you bring on a 3rd captain, you're going to be looking to hire 4 more firefighters?
No, that's not correct. We have 4 captains. The way the infrastructure of the fire department works, the hierarchy, you have 1 fire chief, you have 1 deputy fire chief. We work days, basically. I mean, we're available 24 hours a day, but for the most part, we work days. I have 4 captains because I have 4 work groups. There are 6 total members on each work group. We're not up to 8. That would be awesome if we could go to 8. If you're going to propose that, I don't think I'd argue with that, but I don't think that's realistic. We have 4 groups.
Just trying to understand.
Yep.
We have 4 groups of 6 personnel, 1 captain and 5 firefighter paramedics. So there are 4 captains, 1 for each group, and each of those captains has 5 firefighters working with them, split between 2 fire stations. So there's a captain and 3 firefighters at headquarters, and there's 2 firefighters at station 2. So the addition of a day captain would be just an additional captain on weekdays or whatever it is that we decide those hours are going to be. We'll work that out, assuming we get this position. And it would be almost an administrative type of a position where they'd work, whether it be Monday through Friday or whatever, to conduct business like that.
So day more. Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry. So I know I asked about just comparable towns, and you had said like Plymouth, but I feel like Plymouth is still bigger than us. But like Hanover, for example, like how do we compare to Hanover? Because I feel like they are probably close to Abington and don't have a lot of growth in their fire department like we're having, but their town seems a little bit bigger.
Yeah, Hanover, I think, may actually have closer to 7 or 8 firefighters on the shift. We're behind Hanover. I believe they also do have a day captain. I cannot confirm that. I'd have to check. I didn't say Plymouth. I said closer down towards Kingston.
Oh, sorry.
Plymouth is one of the largest.
County.
Yeah,
sorry, I
Kingston.
misunderstood.
Yep. And so John, just clarifying, it would be a captain working on the day shift, doing things like inspections and that type of stuff, not necessarily captaining a team of firefighters, correct?
Correct. Now, that's not to say, if we get a fire, I would expect that captain to be available to go to the fire just as myself and the deputy does as well.
Yep.
We would be promoting a firefighter to the position of captain. So at that point, we'd be hiring a new firefighter at the lowest rate.
Okay.
So, but there is an overall increase in the budget, which I'll get to, but so we'd be hiring a new firefighter, but promoting a current firefighter up to captain. That's how that would work. If there's no other questions on that, unless you have any, I can. jump right
Anyone
into the
else?
budget.
Anyone else with questions there,
I
Chris?
just say, personally, I like the numbers on it, all the numbers, but it's just me personally.
Yeah, I think if we could get the sort of the detailed breakdown of the number there that's not part of this line by line,
Yep.
maybe after the meeting, I think that would be good.
Do you want just the bottom line number, what that change would be then, Matt, or did you want it line by, or did you want like just the subcategories of the different line items in the budget?
Yeah, I think knowing Chris, I think he'd like the subcategories.
Okay.
So
if we start on page 1 of 6 from the fire department,
yep,
which starts with the fire salaries budget, which you have there. So that 2,190,000 should actually be 2,264,831. And I can send this to you later, if you don't want to make all these changes as we go, but
yeah,
because there's going to be a lot of these, just for the sake of that.
2,264, so adding about 75K right there.
Correct. Yep, and that's
Okay.
really is close to that. Dropping down now in all of these salary groupings, very similar to the library, the way Vader kind of groups these, you're going to see some massive numbers here. That's because it's grouping a number of either captains or firefighters that have the same title. They're all grouped in there together.
That number that I'm circling is not one person. That's
correct.
Multiple.
I don't know why it did this either. My budget and my Excel spreadsheet, everybody's listed individually. When Vader just kind of combines these together, it gets confusing. So the next main subcategory dropping down, which is the overtime budget.
Yep.
And again, this is a total combined of all types of overtime. And this could be anything from multiple calls. We have fires, large storms. You can see that, it's all listed down there, how I come with that number. It's basically, it's everything we do is to maintain the 6 firefighters. When I say firefighters, I'm including captains in all ranks. So just for clarity, to maintain 6 firefighters on shift at all time. And as things get busy, if we get large incidents like that, that's where all of these are coming. So if there's some that are training either on or off duty, there's with the collective bargaining agreement, there's some overtime with that. If I have to take a shift away from their duties to train, sometimes we have to, I backfill the on-duty shift for that. All of this is contractual, basically. So that dollar figure that you have, the 326,541 should actually be 336,603. The reason for that is there's a couple. I'm adding some hours because there's one additional member of the fire department. This also very slightly changes the overall average hourly overtime rate, which gets calculated throughout the entire budget. So that skews these somewhat too on some of the smaller amounts. That's the main reason for that. Dropping down to holidays, we'd be adding one additional. I'm sorry.
Real quick. Adding an additional member to the department raises the amount of overtime?
The overtime rate, the average overtime rate, the dollar figure.
Okay.
The next category is holidays. That goes up slightly from 120,009 to 124,441. The next page on the weekend differential, there is no change on that. The specialist stipend line item, that is increased to reflect one additional person to 32,250. The next page down on page 3, which would be the vacation budget. That actually goes up 2 additional weeks because of the newer firefighter member. So that will go up to 243,390. The line below that, the sick leave, that would go up to 201,962. The bereavement, there is no change. The sick leave incentive, there is no change. The bottom of the page, the other budget appropriation, that's listed on the following page. That number is going to go up to 63,113.
And what's that for?
That's on the next page. That would be, actually, hold on.
Oh, I see.
I apologize. This is some of the education training that they have from their contract. Basically, each member gets 36 hours a year to go either to take a fire academy course, or if they have a fire academy course that happen to be scheduled on their shift that they cannot change when those dates are, that provides some overtime to cover that for training as well. The next category, the in-service training, that should be 94,076. For original, it was 90,931. That should be 94,076.
Have you been doing less training this year than you'd expect because of COVID?
Yes, we have, but this year we also took a budget cut to it, and that's where I took it from.
But you're quite a bit lower. The actual seems a lot lower than the budget.
So I'll speak on that. So we asked the chief to sharpen his pencil, and he sharpened his pencil and brought it back. And then we realized that maybe we have a little bit more money and bring it back to where his original request was. So what the chief is talking about is his original request, and what you're seeing as he's speaking and saying that it's a little bit more than what you're looking at is because he's going back to what his original request was.
No, I understand that.
Chris is
Okay.
comparing.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that what you're
Yeah.
seeing in numbers and what he's speaking is because we sharpened our pencils and then we said, let's try to provide them with something more than, than what their bottom line is, because they do need additional staff. So he's speaking on what he really wants, and you're looking at what we cut it back to. So I just want you guys to be cognizant of that.
Yep, I think what Chris was referring to was what I have highlighted on the page right there. I think you can see that.
Yeah, it went from 93.
The 93 and of that 22,717 has been spent so far in this fiscal year.
Right, and with that being said, he has to do the training in-house, and it's going to be things that he's going that the expenses are going to be happening throughout the rest of the year.
The way the last year has been, obviously things are still shut down. We have not been doing as much as we would like to, just because things have been shut down.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're hoping this budget will reflect that. We're hoping this budget will reflect more of a normal year.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
We're hoping it will be more of a normal year.
So dropping down, I believe where we left off was the next of the other benefits, which originally was 91,405.
Yep.
The new figure will be 92,505. That goes up slightly.
Okay.
So that brings my total salaries, and this is the main one you're looking for. The total salaries for the department would be 3,468,325. That's not listed on there, but I just did that math from my other spreadsheet.
Yep.
So the next portion would be the expenses. There is no change really on any of this, with the exception of removing completely the line item for the Holbrook Dispatch,
Yep.
which is on page 6.
There we go.
So that drops from originally the figure was 190,035 down to 0. And again, this is where, you know, I think we can begin to prime the pump, if you will, to hire this position,
Yep.
to continue the growth in town, that after the next, you know, several years when the grant is done, hopefully with all of this, the growth is coming one way or the other. This is
Yeah,
going to
and-
allow us to just deal with it more realistically.
And certainly our hope is that by the time that the grant is done, we're back to an economy where there's growth and no pandemic.
So Chief, your 3,468,000 was with what we are considering a collective bargaining?
No,
No, okay,
no,
okay.
I don't believe so, Sue. I don't believe so.
Okay, I just want to make sure that they understand that there's going to be another article on the warrant for negotiations that we're doing currently.
It's a small number, but your computer maintenance budget doubled from last year, but we also saw software in the IT budget.
Yes, that,
1,000.
I'm glad you said that, because then I did have a note on that. It says new department software, but it may be added to the IT department instead. So you're correct. That can go back to, I think what my original request was for. That was an unknown when I put the budget together. I'm glad you said that. Because Wayne did increase that in his budget. I did see that. Thank you. As well as the gas for heat. That's another one that may be able to come down. Because we have the new boilers that are working very well, and they are supposed to be more efficient. I kept the original number that I had just because we have not seen the actuals on that yet. But the manufacturer is telling us we should see a reduction, hopefully of possibly 30% on that. I'm just, before I cut that, I just want to make sure, because it's so new.
Is the maintenance on the boilers, is that included in that line as well?
That would be under just my regular building maintenance.
Okay.
And we haven't had to touch them since they put them in back in January.
Well, right.
Normally this time,
Yeah, because I seem to remember that, what it was, something like an extra 10,000. No, actually, it was kind of notable for the amount of maintenance that those boilers were requiring on an annual basis. So that should have improved that piece.
correct. We have, and again, because they're so new, we haven't seen it yet, but
Yeah.
so far it's looking good.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it's keeping the firefighters warmer.
As well as the trucks. Actually, apparatus wise, we're in great shape. We're ready to pick up one of the second engine that we had rehabbed. We're probably going to get that on Monday. And then the third and last one will be going in. So apparatus wise, we're doing good. Equipment wise, we're doing good. Even in the buildings, and we'll get into the buildings in the next portion afterwards, but at least the boilers have been replaced. That's a massive headache that we would constantly have breakdowns with. And as we said last year, with the shutdowns from COVID, we really had the concern we were not going to be able to get maintenance people to come in and take care of that, because to be honest with you, the one person that was always able to keep these boilers going is about 82 years old. It is what he was the one that would always fix it, and we had concerns on that, as well as they're integrated anyway. So I'm hoping we've really begun catching up on a lot of these priorities that we've had over the last 10 or 12 years since I've been the chief. We're in great shape with the personnel, the equipment, the building inside of it as it is. The only problem is we've outgrown the building, which would be the second portion of this, once you folks are done with this budget request.
Anyone else have questions or comments?
All right, with that, if you're all set with this, if you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears and somewhat turn this over to firefighter Derek Hamadi, who is the chairman of the Fire Station Building Committee. He's done an excellent job on this as well. And Derek, I'm just going to hand this to you, but I'm also here if there's questions as we go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on. I know we got squeezed in, but I'm happy to be here to kind of talk to you about what the Fire Station Building Committee's been doing. First, for those that don't know me, I'm Derek Hamadi. Like the chief said, I'm a firefighter paramedic for the town. I'm the chairman of this committee. The committee's consisted of myself, Wendy Happles, the secretary, Jared Driscoll, Roger Bodie. I want to kind of start with where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to be going next. As you know, this project's been kind of going on for about 2 years now. The feasibility study was voted on and started back in September 2019. It took about 7 months for it to be completed. The feasibility study consisted of an analysis of the existing structures, a space needs program, a response time study, site selection analysis, and design options with probable project costs. The study is very thorough. It's almost 300 pages long. It's available online to look at, and I have hard copies if anybody on your committee would like to have one. The study showed.
Can I ask where? Sorry, can I ask where online it's available?
So it's available through the town website. It should be accessible through the town website. It's on the Abington Fire Department's website. It's on. It's linked to our Facebook page, and the actual URL is abingtonfirestationproject.com. But the actual hard copies of it, there's some at Town Hall. I have extra copies to hand out if anybody wants it. It's a great read, 300 pages. Very, very, very thorough. So the study showed that the analysis of the existing stations do not meet the operational requirements of a modern fire station. And there's several reasons for that. As the chief said earlier, we simply just outgrew the buildings. Apparatus continue to get larger as the modern fire service moves on, which is making the building much, much smaller. There are mechanical, electrical, and plumbing that are all largely original to the building, except for the new boilers that we have, which have done a great job of keeping the building warm, keeping the trucks warm throughout the winter. And there's also some life safety issues that are indicative of old stations that newer stations tend to mitigate. The study also found that a new central facility that combines the functions of both the current stations would adequately respond to the assessed demands of the town for the next half century. The site analysis came down to 2 locations, the North School and Glenowitz Way. For those that don't know where the Glenowitz Way lot is, it's opposite of the high school on the opposite side of a large state-owned property. So it's well off of Glenowitz Way. There's would be some sort of access that would have to go through that, but it's not directly on the road. The town also did its due diligence, and it reached out to any privately owned property that could fit the necessary needs for a new station, but unfortunately there just wasn't anything out there that would meet the requirements of a new station. The study projected cost analysis came for a new station for anywhere between $31 and $34 million, depending on the layout. For the layout, the differences would be if it included housing, the building, and the health department. And those breakdowns are inside the study, and it can kind of show a projected location of how they would be in their sizes. Since the study was done, the committee met several times. We conducted walkthroughs of both the existing stations. It was a unanimous vote that a new station was needed for the town. We also voted that the Glenowitz Way site was an ideal location due to its centralized location and its ability to provide room for growth as the town and the department grows. So right now, the next steps for this project, speaking with Scott, who has come from communities where he has a lot of experience in building municipal buildings. Talking with him, he thinks that the next best step would be to go for a full conceptual design plan and engineering plans. That would give the town an exact figure for the project. So what would we be looking for would be $3.5 million at the next town meeting to get these full plans done. Like I said, that would give us an exact dollar figure of what the project would be at the end of it. It would include design, plan development, soil borings, assessment of a secondary access point, full engineering plans, and acquiring an OPM, which is an owner's project manager. Essentially, this would get us all the way up until the construction phase. So finally, my recommendation for the town moving forward would be to start the process of acquiring an OPM immediately, and with the contingency that if this passes and the funds are available. That's it. If anybody has any questions.
Can I ask, so the 3.5 million, is that in addition to the 30 million estimate for the building, or that's part of the cost of that project?
Good question. So that would be part of that 31 million. Or so if we went with the 31 million, that 3.5 would be subtracted from that.
Got it.
When they determine that it's a centralized location, did they take into account that there's only one way in, you can't get, or will there be additional access that gets to Hancock Street directly without having to go out all the way out onto Route 18?
Out and around.
And around.
So part of the study was a response study. So what they hired another sub company to come in. Dr. Jennings came out to Abington, and he spent several days conducting these studies where it showed how long it would take to get from, let's say, that centralized location on Route 18 to those locations. And the response study showed that it was very minimal in time changes from where we are now or from the other location. It's the outlying districts of the town that are tough to get to, no matter where we put a department. Mainly the far edges of North Quincy Street, which is difficult to get to no matter what. Or if there were ever to be future growth or development up in the naval base. But that location specifically for Abington is the geographical center of town. Although it does take a long time to get around, we have the ability to get there still pretty fast.
There is no plan to put a road from the Glenridge site directly over to Hancock Street as part of this, or from what we've been discussing whatsoever. There would be a plan to put a road from that site directly into Route 18, and that point, which is pretty much right at Giardino's or next to Lowe's, that is the geographic center of town. From that point, whether we go north or south, up 18, and then up either Rockland Street or up 139 like we do it now, we can reach the other sides of Hancock Street up to Linwood Street or Chestnut to North Quincy. It's almost the same times that we're doing now.
I'm just trying to picture how that all works with the school right there and like the traffic from the school.
So we can mitigate that as we do already on Route 18. We have the ability to control traffic lights. And although you would think that would cause more of a backup, it would actually create a way to make the traffic from school go faster. And give me a second to explain it, but if we were able to place the lights the way a call would come in, if we had to pull out at the Rotary onto Glenowitz Way to respond out for a 911 call, if it happened to be at that exact same time that the road was filled with traffic, waiting for the traffic light already, we'd be able to change the light at 18 and Glenowitz Way to green and completely empty out that whole outbound lane. If a 911 call came in, we could immediately activate that before we even started rolling. So by the time we got there, that side of the street would be completely empty. The benefit to this that would be part of the engineering plans, if we moved forward, would be to show that anybody could control that light. If it were times that the road needed to be emptied out, it could help make some of that traffic move a little bit faster for the school as well. But primarily for us, if we needed to go out, we could clear out that whole outbound lane before we even got to the Rotary to drive out. And then the light system would go right back to normal.
Just
Okay.
a question about site.
I'm picturing like drop off and pick up. Been in that line many times. I'm just trying to picture how that would work with a fire truck coming through.
So we wouldn't be responding on the inbound side of that lane. So
Right.
where the drop off and pickups are, we're only going to be on the outbound side. So say the traffic is backed by the light and vehicles are backed up all the way to the rotary, we'd be able to stop the traffic at the rotary, turn a green light on at Route 18, completely empty out the outbound lane for us to respond out, and then the lights would turn back and then traffic would be able to continue to flow through.
Ideally, we would have an emergency access road going straight out behind the elderly housing complex right now to dump out to Route 18, and that would only be for fire apparatus coming and going. That would be the
That
ideal
makes more sense.
long-term solution to that.
That's
That
the long-term solution. And well, the part of the 3.5 would be to do an assessment for that secondary egress. There is a plan for it, but it has to be studied. And that wasn't part of the original feasibility study at the time.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's been a couple comments and references tonight about the growth of the town and how big we are and getting around town. So it seems like it would make sense to still keep 2 firehouses, stations, so that we have, coverage on each side of the town versus having it centrally where you just said it would still be difficult to hit areas of town. If you were on Rockland Street, doesn't it make it easier to get to North Quincy Street from Rockland Street than the high school central location?
The difference between getting from that section of Route 18 at Glenwood's Way to where we are on Rockland Street is less than a minute response time. So that difference really isn't that big. And as far as the study was concerned, it said combining the 2 stations would be more functional than having 2 separate. This is by putting all the firefighters into one building with all of our apparatus, being able to take whoever and whatever we needed to mitigate whatever situation was happening. Right now, it's not that it's limiting, it's just that we're split into 2. And when we go out on a call, both stations have to figure out how to operate, which we do find just now. But to operate like a modern fire station, it's better to have everything all in one house so you can make the call as you go. And that's more of an operational question that the chief can answer. But the study was pretty clear that for our specific needs moving forward, because the town has been growing.
I believe, does anybody have the town numbers? It's like we've grown 4,000 residents in 20 years, or is it a greater number than that?
I can't speak to that. I can tell you that there's been at least 3 new subdivisions added in town in the past 3.5 years.
Right, but it's the overall number of people in town versus number of. What's that?
The clerk can give you a pretty good number.
Yeah, I thought last time I looked it was that. But anyways, sorry.
And on top of the just population, it's also construction. I mean, there's a lot of other things that firefighters don't. We're not just going to EMS calls and fire calls. We go to all sorts of hazards. And Route 18 project itself, the doubling of that road all the way down has caused several more calls for us to go to, like MBAs and accidents. But there's things that happen throughout the town that have picked up.
We've simply outgrown the 2 current stations, and there's no room on the land of either station that we have now, Rockland Street or Bedford Street, to add anything to that. The plot plans that we have are simply too small. And to try to either tear down and rebuild on these, first of all, you need more land, which we don't have. And there's no room to even really try to rehab it, because we actually need a larger apparatus bay on each station. The trucks are literally bumper to bumper. And in some places there, you get 18-inch clearance around it. You really should have 5 to 8 feet around it or between them. That's just the apparatus. The living conditions, as Derek was saying, there's no separate facilities for male and female employees. There's no separate bathroom facilities or dorm rooms. We're literally 3 feet, if not closer, from any living portion of the building to the apparatus. We should have almost a complete building between for an airlock due to the carcinogens. The fire coats and the gear that we have, they should be in a separate ventilated room because they're off-gassing even after we clean them as best we can. And it's all carcinogens and the products of the combustion. They should almost go in a vault that has a negative airspace that goes directly to the outside Right now, they're on a hook in the kitchen. They're in a hook right outside the washrooms because there's nowhere to put them. There's no floor drains at the headquarters fire station. So it's a swamp, literally. And this Friday night, it will be because we're getting snow or rain again. And that just increases the moisture into everything in here, which it's not healthy, and it also rots out the trucks. These are long chronic conditions that are way overdue, and there's no easy fix for them. We simply need a new fire station. We need a new building.
I think I think that most people, both on the city and in town, share that the needs of the department have definitely outgrown the buildings of the department. I think I know personally my concern is bringing something like this forward in this particular year, in this particular economic climate. Seems dicey. And I don't want you guys, my concern for you guys is trying to do things at the right time so that you get the right results.
We understand that. And a couple things on that. The longer this project waits, the more expensive it's going to get. The time to do this should have been 20 years ago, but obviously, the town couldn't do it. We had other projects going on as well. Thank God we took care of the police station, the town hall, the library, the highway maintenance building, the sewer department, and your high school, middle school. They're done. We never got done.
Not the highway.
Because if they weren't done now, we'd be looking at, they had those needs as we have these needs now. By doing this portion of it, the percentage of the overall project, and the town manager has been instrumental in educating us, because we're not builders, we're firefighters. I'm not a contractor, especially a municipal contractor. By doing this, getting this portion of it done, he's going to have a much more accurate dollar figure what it would be to build and complete the entire project, as opposed to just asking for, let's say this year we're saying, yeah, can we have $32 million to build a project? And then we get into it prior to doing the soil samples, the architectural drawings and so forth. And then you find out maybe you didn't have enough money. By doing it this way, we're going to have all those costs way ahead of time to hopefully bring the cost down. But the longer we wait, and this is based on what we're hearing from both our feasibility study as well as a lot of the contractors, they were expected to go up. I thought it was almost either 7 or 17% a year. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but a lot of it's based on the construction that you see right now in Boston. If you take a ride through Boston, you've seen a forest of cranes because there's so much construction going there. So they're able to drive the cost of construction up because you're competing for those. The longer we wait on this project is only going to begin to increase in costs, anywhere from 7 to 17%. Derek, I'm not sure if you recall that. I think it was 17%, but per year it's going to go further. So that's why we're trying to at least get this portion of it on there, and then the voters going to decide it one way or the other at all aspects of this. But we're not doing our job if we don't tell you as soon as we can, because the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. And if we keep waiting for the perfect year, which is never going to happen, but if we wait a couple more years for this, and now the cost of the project has increased, another however many $1 million, they're going to say, why didn't you ask us for this a few years ago when we could have saved money? That's why we're coming to you now.
I think it's just hard, and I have full respect for the fire department and paramedics, and I employ paramedics. I've been in the EMS community for over 20 years in some fashion. But I just feel like the fire department always comes with really big asks, and really big asks are what allows you to be great at your job and keep our community safe. But just swallow a $3.5 million budget with new positions, in addition to a $3.5 million firehouse in a year that this town has zero money to begin with. And, we're in a year of a pandemic where we have even less money. It's just going to be hard, as a townsperson and a finance committee person. And, professionally, we've all had to, make cutbacks and cut back on staffing and trim down. And it's just hard to wrap your head around when there's just not money there to begin with. And there's a big ask by the department there are, at least in the years that I've been on the finance committee, there's been a big ask every single year by the fire department that I haven't seen with other departments. So I think it's just to really gain an understanding.
So if I could respond to that, we've been rebuilding this fire department that for many years prior to me becoming chief was really let go. And I inherited basically a broken department, and we've rebuilt that up to where we are now. We have also been through the last year, and we have not worked out of our building. We have not worked remotely. We have not closed our building. We have worked very hard during the pandemic, harder than we ever have probably, out of this building in non-socially distant possible buildings, just the way we are. And we're trying to correct that.
This year's been.
And John, I'm not saying that you haven't worked hard. I mean, I'm in healthcare too. I fully appreciate, you went in every single day a year ago at this time wondering how safe you were going to be. And I'm sure you lost sleep as I did, wondering, how am I going to keep my family safe, my employees safe, and my community safe? So I fully respect that. I do. But it's just hard this year in the state that we're in. And I would love to give you a new fire department. I would love to give you, we just came off COVID and now we're worrying about Ebola. Like, who wants to deal with this crap right now? But it is what it is, unfortunately. And quite frankly, it sucks. I'd love to give you a brand new fire station and have all brand new things in town, but it's hard. It's hard to wrap our heads around for all of it.
Well, as far as the fire station building committee is concerned, I feel like your committee shouldn't really be surprised. We did vote to have a feasibility study done, so we knew this was coming. So our job was to find out what we needed, and the town needs a new station. Our buildings are old and small, and it's anybody that comes to our stations leaves here saying you need a new fire station. You knew that we had a feasibility study done. You knew what the feasibility study's been done for quite some time. So the number's not really a big surprise. The only reason that we're coming now today asking for this $3.5 million is because Scott has a lot of experience doing this in other towns, and he feels like this is the best way to present it without having to just ask right now for you to put $34 million on to this town meeting. Because that would be the next ask if we don't go about it this way. But that's what the study was done for. We found that the need is there. And yes, COVID happened, but we still all made it through it. I understand that.
I don't think that the station's a surprise. I think that it's the station with the increased department size. The size,
the new fire station has nothing to do with the amount of members that we currently have or may have. Like I said, this study showed that a new centralized station would accommodate growth for the department over the next 50 years, growth for the town, growth for stuff for us to do on the property. We can't even conduct training for the most part on the property sizes that we have now. We need a place to do that. That's what this study showed, that by going to a lot size like the Glenowitz Way site, that would accommodate us.
Katie, you've been asking me to try to compare Abington with some of my neighboring community departments, and this is part of that. We have one of the oldest and tightest, more crowded fire stations in the South Shore. We're not the only one, certainly, but many of the other towns comparable to us have done this already. They're not having the issues that we're having right now because they took care of them years ago. We didn't design a Taj Mahal fire station. We designed a fire station room by room based on the needs of how Abington actually works. Physically, room by room, the dimensions of each room was basically put together as an individual piece of a puzzle, and then all of those pieces were put together into one large structure that would house that in the most efficient way possible. That's how this building was built. It's the required sizes for NFPA and OSHA recommendations around fire apparatus. It's the required sizes for restroom facilities for male and female employees, which we don't have that right now. It's the required sizes for all of these portions of the office space and whatnot, as well as the parking areas and the the apparatus turning radius areas to safely be able to maneuver in and out of the building. That's where this came from. We didn't just create a large building because we want a big fire station. It was scientifically put together by some of the expert firematic engineers, which are architects that specialize in fire departments based on years of experience. That's where this came from. This is based on how we actually operate in Abington. If we were Brockton or if we were Halifax, it would be a very different building. It's based on how we operate and the realities that we face. So I'm not quite sure where I'm hearing, we're asking for this, we're asking for all these things. I think the schools ask for what they need and they live within the boundaries of what they have. They have a very large building, which is great. My son goes there. We're happy for it. The library asked for what they need. The town hall asked for what they need. I think, to single out, you're saying the fire department's asking every year for these large things. Unfortunately, fire apparatus is expensive. Ambulances are expensive. It is what it is. The going rate is expensive across the board. I don't know why you're singling out the fire department. I'm kind of curious.
I'm not singling out the fire department, so I apologize if it came.
I think you did. You did. Anyway, so that's.
So can I ask, was there consideration to maybe doing a smaller building and refurbishing one of the existing fire department buildings, just to kind of maybe, I think part of the issue is like the $30 million is sort of a shocking number in general. And it's, if there's a way to kind of make that more palatable, I don't know if that would even be it. I was just curious if they discussed it at all as part of the feasibility.
They did. It was part of the study. They found that the current buildings there's no way to retrofit them to fit a modern fire station. The chief kind of touched on it earlier, and I mentioned it during my first presentation about the life safety issues. There's no way to modify these buildings to protect us from the carcinogens of off-gassing stuff that's coming from the engines, the diesel fuels, the things that we bring back from the station when we're out and about. These new modern fire stations have what's called a cold to hot corridor. So essentially, whenever you come back into the station from wherever you are, if it's a COVID positive patient, if it's a fire, if it's a brush fire, an MVA, whatever the situation is that we were at, and we came back to the station, when we get back in, you go through this buffer zone that allows you to decontaminate and disrobe all of the stuff that we're wearing and clean ourselves up before we go into the administrative and day-to-day operation side of the building. Right now, they're one and the same. The apparatus bay is an open door into the public area, the only public area of the building, the watch room and our day room, which is also our training room. Even the office that the chief is sitting in right now is actually just the old corner of the apparatus bay, retrofitted into an office. So there's no buffer between where he's sitting now and the apparatus that we're sitting in, that we use every day. All these new stations have this built in there, and that's to protect us from essentially getting cancer, which is a pretty high rate of things that happen to most firefighters when they retire. We end up getting cancer because we sit around and eat and breathe and sleep in this environment all the time. So there's no way to retrofit the buildings that we're in to do that. And it's not cost effective to tear them down and rebuild a smaller one. The feasibility study ultimately decided that it would be cheaper to just build a centralized station to house everything instead of having to duplicate the efforts, duplicating these cold to hot corridors or all the other life safety features, fire prevention systems. Those are all things that need to be updated with new fire buildings. Just like all these other newer buildings that are up to the newer fire standards, those are things that would be done in these new buildings to keep us safe. There's just no way to retrofit what we currently have and have that be cost effective. And the cost number that you say is a sticker shock, it is a big number. But again, this feasibility study came out quite some time ago. It hasn't been a surprise to what the cost is. And like the chief said, this is not going to ever get cheaper. Brockton is building a building right now that's close to $100 million. There's other departments in the area that are building fire stations currently that are all around the same range. So just like we're going through hard times. All those other communities go through hard times, and they're still seeming to find a way to fulfill building new fire stations because other areas have old fire stations like ours. Ours just happen to be very old.
The question is, Brockton is
Quick, John, the two buildings we currently have, when were they built?
Headquarters at 1040 Bedford Street was built in 1964. Station 2 at number 5 Rockland Street was built in 1973. Both of those were built prior to Abington having an EMS department. Both were built prior to having any female firefighters on the department. And both were built prior to any of the IT computer infrastructure that we've retrofitted into it. And they were also built during times when the apparatus was much smaller. Fire apparatus just continues to get larger in size, not because firefighters like big things, but because we're doing more tasks. These trucks are carrying more things because we don't just go put fires out anymore. We do fires, EMS, hazmat, unknown rescues, all different types of things. That's the reason for that.
And then I don't even know if you have the answer to this, but Holbrook built a station along with I think it's fire and police.
Correct.
One, do you know how long ago that was? And do you know around what the cost was to do that?
Yeah, that was, I believe, around 2007. And the cost on that was relatively low. Some of it's the way they constructed it, but back then the cost was lower. That was closer, I think, to $11 million, I believe. And again, the time to build it would have been then. If they were to build that now, they'd probably be spending more than we'd be looking at because it's a combined station. We looked at numerous fire stations. Many of them were combined. Sharon's fire station, because they had the police station with that as well, that was, I want to say closer to 40 million, I believe, a couple of years ago. Mansfield is building a combined one now. We looked at Plainville, Foxborough. The combined ones are very expensive as well. And the geographic portion that we have in town, it didn't work that well anyway. Because we did consider, can we just add on closer on Central Street? That didn't give us the best response times from that location. It works for the police because they have sector cars throughout the town. For the fire department, we don't know what truck will bring into every type of an emergency. It could be an engine, a ladder, it could be the forest fire truck or the boat. So we want to kind of keep that in one central location to reduce the response time. Any municipal building's expensive. I think it's Easton is now. I think it's Easton is beginning to build an elementary school, and that's in the $62 million range. I think it's not a massive school. I think that's one of their elementary schools. Anything, the construction costs are through the roof right now. We're not happy with the cost of this either. But this project, if we delay it 10 years, now you're going to be looking at probably close to a $50 million building, 40 to 50, depending where things go. And at that point, again, they're going to say, well, shame on you. Why didn't we do it 20 years ago or 10 years ago? That's why we're presenting this now.
And I think that kind of what you're hearing from everyone is sort of are trying to look at all sides of this and to look at it from both the side of the residents of the town where we need new fire station. We need a modern fire station, but also from the residents of the town who, many of whom have lost jobs, and our town budget is really tight this year. And so I look at it and I say, if we bring a $3.5 million request before town meeting, I'm honestly afraid it'll get voted down.
We have those concerns too.
Just strictly on the number. Now, I don't think that means we don't bring it before the town, because I think ultimately it's the town's decision to make. But I think it's important that we have discussions like this where we go over the various different sides, the various different points, the various different possibilities, because I think this allows you to bring up all of the things like the fact that the current buildings were designed before there were female firefighters. I don't think most people in town were going to have realized that. The hot to cold hallways, I don't think many people would have known about that. Those are things that are important information to be able to have in this discussion. So
We've been having discussions, Matt,
yep.
With the town manager. We've gone on camera before for his town manager's corner, where we presented some of these things, and even Kevin Tachi came into the building, and we kind of did like a room by room tour because of the beginning of the COVID time frame. We couldn't just invite people over to the station to come see it. So we actually did a room by room tour of the tight situations that we're already in, which have been actively being broadcasted so everybody can see that. We've been trying to keep up on social media and make sure that we're trying to get this out there, because we haven't really had the forum to really present this so much to the residents entirely. We did go in front of the Capital Planning Committee meeting and kind of given a similar presentation, but we've tried to get this out there so it's not so much of a big surprise, because the town has known for a couple of years now that this was in the works.
Yeah. And I think that the timing with the pandemic has really not done you any favors.
Oh, no, not at all.
So
not at all.
Not that
Not
it's
even
done anyone any favors,
Yeah.
but I think that where your needs are large ticket, it's done you less favors.
But again, this was all this idea was discussed amongst myself and the chief and the town manager about just finding a way to make it so we can come together to get an exact figure, so there wasn't any guesswork at the end of it. Other areas that are doing the same thing because they don't want to scare anybody with a false number and then all of a sudden come back and be like, oh, we're short, we need more. We wanted to be very precise and exact. That way we could tabulate out exactly how this is going to affect all the residents, myself included. I don't want to have to ask for so much money for a building. It's just something that's going to have to happen at some point. If it doesn't happen now, it's going to happen eventually. It's just how much more is it going to cost?
How long do we think the exact figure that we get is good for? Do you know what I mean? So
if this got approved, are you asking like once that's done and we get the exact figure, how long that would be good for?
Yeah.
So the process would be, let's just hypothetically say this goes to town meeting and passes. We would we would get to work right away, and in the 12 months between this town meeting and the next, come together and get all these engineering costs and everything tabulated. Once that's done, this is a guess, but as far as the feasibility study coming out, once the feasibility study came out, the projected numbers that study had end up lasting until late fall of this year. So the study's been out now since almost a year. So about a year to 18 months. And that's just a wild guess. That's actually a good question that I can present to KBA, which is the company that did the feasibility study. But that's also a variable because we don't really know how construction costs are going to increase. Although it sounds silly, like the chief said, as there's a larger demand for construction, that jumps the cost. So let's just say, and this is all again guesswork, but if the world starts to come back to normal and people start going back to work and there's increased construction all around, that's just going to increase overall cost for things. It's a great question that I could present to KBA for clarification, but even if I did, I think they wouldn't be able to really give me an honest answer either.
Yeah, it's all looking in crystal balls at that point. So, Barbara.
I'm just saying it's definitely very fluid. Like I do have that fear of you know, I don't want to wait on something that we could get cheaper now, but I also am concerned with how long that figure is good for. But it's I don't want to say it's a volatile situation, but it's definitely an unpredictable it's an unpredictable number.
Yeah.
There are a couple of offsets on this, if I could too, that, and I'm also a resident, and I'm not even gonna see this in my career, to be honest with you. I'll be paying for this, and I'm not even gonna be working in this station, because realistically, by the time this thing's ever built, I'm gonna be retired, but I'll be paying for it. There's a couple of offsets here, and I'm gonna ask Sue if she knows, this may be more for the treasurer, Sonia, but the town hall, the library, and the police station should be coming off of the long-term debt fairly soon, or definitely within, I think, the early stages of this. So do you know what that is? And the other end of portion of this would be, assuming at some point, if we do get a new central fire station built, your two current fire stations at that point could be declared surplus, because we're not looking to have 3 fire stations. We're looking to then, at that point, close these 2 fire stations. In, if the town chose, they could then sell these 2 properties and then begin getting tax money back on that as well. So there is an offset to this. So
Yeah.
do you know when those would be coming off?
Sorry, John. I hadn't thought of that aspect of it, but thank you.
So the fire station, I mean, the police station is coming off in 2026, I believe. Not sure about the police, the town hall and library, but they're right behind it. But with that said, as you're saying, those things are going to drop off, and you're going to pick up where you have to take into consideration that
The cap, right? The
go ahead.
Our next kind of forced big expense is the capping of that of the landfill.
Right. We have a huge capping of landfill coming up, and you could possibly reduce the cost of the fire department building as well by not putting inspectional services there. That really would reduce the cost of that building.
Wait, explain that. So
the right now, what they're looking at is putting building in Board of Health in that building as well. So they're already in the town hall. So why move them to the building of the fire department so that they're working together? They can still work together within the town hall without making it part of that building. John, I'm sorry for probably bursting your bubble, but
No.
I really don't think that you guys could probably cut off $1 million of an expense by having that expense.
Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you mentioned at the beginning of when you started talking about this, that the overall number of 31 to 34 million, part of that variation was whether or not those services were included in the building.
Yes. Yep. So in the layouts in the feasibility study, you'll see 3 different versions. And the lower end version is the one where those 2 departments are cut off. And originally that was put on there to help free up some of the space that was at town hall, because I know it's pretty tight there, but and also because we work, especially recently, hand in hand with the health department, and the building department works hand in hand with our fire prevention department. So the thought process was to kind of help put some of that stuff together. But because of the cost that we saw when we originally started hearing the numbers during the feasibility study, we wanted to make sure that we had an option there that didn't have them to kind of help lower the cost. That was the reason for that smaller size layout to be placed in there.
This portion, if we were to get the 3.5 for the complete engineering studies like that, that's when that determination would ultimately be made, and we could make those changes then. And if that's one of the things long-term going forward, that would probably have to be done.
And as well as offsets, there's actually a lot of offsets, and I haven't really brought them up, and I'm glad you asked. I know that speaking with Scott, he wants to kind of sit down with Sue and Sonia and kind of work out some of the figures of how it all would play out. But the town hall, the library, and the police station would be coming off, and I think it's closer to 2025.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we'd have the 2 current fire stations as surplus buildings. And then on top of that, not using the North School would be another surplus for the town, which that building already is a net loss for the town, because the building that needs to be torn down that's a cost that we actually had put into the feasibility study. If we were to go to the North School site, we'd have to demo that building, and that cost was $1.25 million just to take the building down, not even to start the process of site work for the new building. So by not going there, if the town wanted to sell that, that would save us the money of having to tear the building down. And that's outside of my realm, but that's just how it's presented in the feasibility study. So there are some offsets there that do help, but without putting it together with everybody else, it's hard to present exact figures.
Right,
And
that's what makes sense to have an exact figure.
But
Right,
by
so-
doing this,
so I-
doing these full schematic plans and engineering plans, that would all come down to the penny, exactly what we would need.
And
So-
I'm right there with Derek, whereas you really need to know where you want to go with this, because we could completely sell those other two properties. We can say that, you know, Glenwood Way is perfect. There's just so many things that we can think about, variables that we can think about, but you guys as a committee and Derek and the building committee, I think you guys need to get together more closely to figure out the different options, because there's really a lot that we can do or not do to make this happen for the town as a whole. And I really do think that we need a new fire department. The two buildings that we have are obsolete and not working for the department as a whole. But we really do need to come together as a whole to try to figure out how we can make it happen, and make it happen so that it's feasible for the town.
The OPM as well as the soil core samples are two of the missing elements that are needed for this. And Sue, that exactly answered your question on that. Because the feasibility study gave us renderings of what a ideal, fire station for the town of Abington for our needs would look like, but they're not engineered plans. Those engineered plans need the core drilling samples, and they need a real solid site plan study beyond just choosing land. They actually have to figure what is going to be required of that. And that in turn, plus with the OPM to kind of help tie this whole thing together, with an experienced person that has done that, to bring this forward to where we need to go. That's what this portion is about. It's to finalize the feasibility study recommendations into an actual structure, an actual project. And that's why we're asking for this now, because that's the missing piece.
I agree.
Can I just ask where this 3.5 is almost a vote or referendum on moving forward with the project, right? Because there has been no vote taken yet as to whether or not to move forward with the project, right?
Correct.
The vote that we so far took, I apologize, Jack.
Yeah.
The monetary vote that we've already invested so far is over $100,000 for the feasibility study itself.
Yeah.
That was kind of the first, momentum forward, if you will. Obviously, 3.5 is more than 100,000. We do understand that. And at the end, if we invest into this, that would give the town the documents needed and the answers to these unknown questions in hand to then decide, all right, we've invested this much into it. Do we want to go forward the whole way, or are we going to cut our losses now? And maybe we've got these plans. We'll wait a little bit longer until we feel better. But that's kind of the real jumping off point, would be after we get this portion done.
Yeah. Seems to me if we vote for this 3.5 million, we're saying we're going forward.
That's
Somewhere
right.
around 30 million.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think it's hard to spend.
If you
I
agree to
think
put
it's hard
that
to
on,
spend 10% of it and spend 3.5 million and not expect that the other 90% will get spent.
right? So when you go to town meeting as the finance committee, if you agree to put this 3.5 million on, you're saying you agree that we're going forward with the fire station. So you need to be able to back that up at town meeting and say, we want this here, we're agreeing to it because we agree to a fire station. We agree we need one. And obviously, if you look at the fire stations that we have, we need a fire station, you know? It's just to determine what kind of fire station we need and how big it needs to be and stuff like that beyond that. But
No,
when it
I,
goes,
I,
when it
I,
goes, when
I
it
think
goes,
if we vote for this 3.5, we're saying we need the project as the feasibility study outlined. We're not, there's no more, you know, should it be 2, should it be 1? That's all decided if we vote for the 3.5.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that's why,
don't
and I
wanna
think
throw
that's
away the
why we
money.
have so many questions, and that's why
that's okay.
that's why we're concerned about the timing of it.
It's
So-
the timing is the. Is,
I know the timing's not perfect, but if we don't do it now, like you talk about the timing and the interest rates. So the timings might not be perfect, but the interest rate is perfect. So, you
I
know,
don't throw away the money that we've already spent to then have to spend it again
Yep.
5 years from now.
Yep. Nope,
That's the other
it's-
aspect of it. We've put
Very-
money into this, and I don't want to do that twice.
well, you want to have to hope that if the townspeople are voting that they're okay with doing the design,
Well,
that
that's
they
my thing.
know that 3 or 4 years from now, they're
Right.
going to do the building. So when we go to the town meeting and say, can you do, you're willing to do this design and engineering, that they have the expectation that you're doing this with the expectation that in a couple of years, we're coming back for a building.
That's what my thing is, that, and that
the benefits
the
of
town
to
voted
doing
that
this-
they're not gonna look, they're not going to be looking to throw that money away and wait 5 more years and then have to put that money forward again.
I guess if I could add as well, and I say the same thing every year, and you all have very busy lives and you're spending a lot of it now with us. And I thank you for that, for all of the meetings you do. But to echo what the library said previous to us, you're all more than welcome to tour our facilities. I say that all the time. I don't think I've seen most of you at my stations to see that. I know I've seen Barbara a number of years ago, but in fact, I'm almost going to suggest, or this may be the year that we really do a tour for your own edification. If you have to make a recommendation one way or the other, if you have not even been in our stations, maybe this is the year you should take a look. So at least you know as a committee what we're talking about. And that may change your mind one way or the other. I'm not really sure, but we could absolutely be happy to host an in-person tour of both facilities to show you what we deal with 24 hours a day, and we don't shut our buildings down. We don't work remote, we work from here.
I think that's a great idea, especially when we're being asked to weigh in.
Yeah, I agree, Barbara, because I've been at the station on Bedford Street and I don't know where the hell these people sleep. You know, I walk in the building, I see the trucks, I see their working environment, I see their offices. I don't know where these people sleep. And I'm really not advocating for them because I need to be partisan of whatever, but I don't know where these guys sleep in the office, the station on Bedford Street.
Those days are long gone. We do have bunk dorms because we're here 24 hours, but I can tell you personally, I've been up since 1:30 this morning at a fire in Brockton and till we are here right now. So it's, as is half the on-duty crew today as well. So those days have kind of ended, but we'd be more than happy to show you the living quarters, the office areas, the restroom facilities, which are shared, as well as the apparatus bays that are very difficult to work around. I think you need to see it, to be honest with you.
I think that would be a good thing to do. I think most of us understand without having seen it, the conditions that you're in. And I think our concern is not really the conditions, but the timing. which you guys have no control over, we have no control over, so.
And we
I
all
think
get
it's
that.
definitely the
Oh, with-
timing, but
Yeah, and with that,
Okay,
with
well,
that
it-
said, are there new points or questions for this? As I think we've gone through a lot of information for this. All right, does anyone have new questions or points on this? And then my other question, seeing a lot of heads shaking no. Do you have any other capital items for this year, John?
For this year, no. We're caught up.
Good.
Actually, I apologize, an emergency one. The roof at Station 2. We're currently taking bids to do another emergency repair of the roof at Station 2 because it's the age and design of the building, without beating that dead horse. But the storm that we had about a month ago, when we had about 6 inches of that slush, it basically pressurized the main apparatus bay roof at Station 2. We estimated there were several tons of weight on that. It was sitting water, standing water, just because we haven't had a snow like that in a number of years. And it forced its way through some openings that we have not had issues with before. And now it's been leaking ever since. It's not the roof that we had repaired last year. That part's fine, but it's the main apparatus bay. And then over the right side is the living quarters. There's actually 4 separate roofs on that building. So we're working with the town manager to accept bids. A ballpark is about $35,000 to completely strip off and remove both of those 2 roofs. The good thing is all of the roofs combined for both fire stations will be less than 10 or 12 years old at that point. So it's again, we're still in these buildings one way or the other.
Yep.
For the next number of years. We still have to maintain them, and we do maintain them, but they're giving out. So that building, Station 2, was a building designed for Florida. It was not designed for New England. When they built it in 1973, we did it cheap because it's all they had, and we've been living with it ever since, and it's inefficient. So that is the only capital request that I have, and that actually may be this year, not going into FY22.
Okay. Anyone have other questions for the chief or for Derek?
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Gentlemen, thank you
Thank you very
guys. Your time is very valuable. We appreciate you spending it with us. We appreciate all of the information. Chief, I'll definitely email you about a tour and setting up a time that people can go. I think that's a important piece of this. So
We're here 24 hours, 7 days a week. So whatever works for you, we'll accommodate.
Thank you
Alright.
very much for your time.
yes,
Thank you.
thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, nice and early still. Let me find my agenda. There we go. All right. So, does anyone have any liaison reports? Looks like a no. Deb, was there any correspondence?
No.
All right. We have our minutes that were sent to us from our meeting last week on March 10th. Let me call those up. Switch share. Oh, save them. Hold on. Apologies, I know it's late. I know I'm taking far too long doing this. Changing my share now, so we have them in front of us. There we go. Meeting minutes from our last meeting. Actually,
I
no,
did change the huddle to HO,
HUDL.
yeah, HUDL. I've changed that.
1, 2, 3,
That's the only change.
So
Can you vote?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes of March 10th.
Second.
Second.
it's a motion from Barbara, second from Russ. Are there any discussion or comments on the meeting minutes before us? Without any, all those in favor of approving the motion for the meeting minutes?
Aye.
Abstaining? Katie? No. That's nobody. They are approved. Thank you very much. Struggling with my computer right now. There we go. All right. Our next meeting, as I said at the start, is not in fact next week. Our next meeting will be on March 31st, 2 weeks from tonight. We will have the school department with us. So it's another short meeting. Does anyone have any further discussion, comments, motions for tonight?
To adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Motion to adjourn and multiple seconds. Any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time, and we apologize for the lateness of tonight's